I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three Black moms.
Hi there. Looking forward to July 4th tomorrow, Independence Day. Well, what does freedom, that is what July 4th is celebrating, what does that look like? What does that mean to us? What does that mean to our children? The civil rights era from the 1950s to the 1970s showed a lot of struggle as people worked toward freedom in areas where they didn't have them, things that are guaranteed by the Constitution. Is that struggle over? Sisters, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'll start since I wasn't sure how long you'd have to hold that pose. Well, considering how we celebrated Juneteenth as Black people in this country, that was our Independence Day because July 4th meant nothing for us in 1776 because there was still a lot of other stuff going on, like slavery, and so it's different. And because of the recent Supreme Court rulings that have gutted, women's autonomy, that have gutted the Voting Rights Act that we fought very hard for, and a lot of other civil liberties, and enhanced things like gun laws, to the extent that you can have as many guns as you want, even in states that don't want you to have that many guns. I'm afraid that we are going backward as far as we're giving lip service to freedom, but it's only freedom within parameters of people who believe exactly the way you do. It is not the individual freedoms that, one, actually probably weren't necessarily guaranteed by the Constitution, which was written by rich white men who owned slaves and thought of women as property as well as enslaved people. So we've got a long way to go before we can really start talking about freedom.
And do you think it makes a difference whether a
We'll have our
person was
cookout.
born here and came from somewhere else? And how might Native Americans feel about the freedoms in the United States?
Well, I think that's the whole thing. Every ethnic group has had a different experience, and ours is unique because even though, and it's not told in the history books, but even though there were many shiploads of us that came before the enslavement and actually did interact with the Native American people and settled here and had families for generations before.
We've got like 1/10% ourselves.
Right. If you had on the DNA, a whole lot of people have Native American ancestry that happened, which means we may be descended from some of those Africans that came over here centuries before Columbus even. But
who was
every immigrant group that came here, depending on when they came, what was happening in America, because the Chinese had a whole different experience. The Polish had a whole different experience. A lot of people who came over, the Japanese had a whole different experience. The Koreans had a different experience. So if you came after a war that happened with your country, there was a different experience. If you came, say, like the Irish, or the Polish, or other times when America may have been going through financial growth period, and so there was opportunities. It just depends on what their situation was. Some people who came here fleeing, dictators and so forth, and may or may not have been welcomed. So I think every immigrants group is different in terms of their experience of what the American dream means and the 4th of July and all of that, even though every school child has to learn about it. But their own ethnic group's experience may have been different. And so that colors how they even see the whole thing. What does it really mean? I mean, did it really mean freedom for you because you were escaping a dictator, or coming to economic prosperity, leaving a country that was in a state of famine? Or did it mean unexpected racism, like with the Chinese? You come
Chinese
someplace.
Exclusion Act, where they did not
Right.
want, and that was what one of the first things. And how does it mean for the indigenous people? Because Christopher Columbus discovered absolutely nothing, never set foot on North America, but there were plenty of people who came over here, stole their land, killed their people, to the point of, there are people today who think that they do not even exist. I've taught some of them. I says, no, indigenous people still exist.
Yeah,
They're
they want
still
life
here,
now.
but they are taught from a historical sense that this is what happened. And no, the Indians all died off. No, they did not. They're still here. So
But even in that, there are places where these people live on reservations. They don't have running water. They don't have modern plumbing. They don't have modern housing. They live like they're in some other country. How do you speak on that? And what should we be doing about those disparities that are very real and very existent?
very existent, and it has been by design. They have been put there and given these resources by design. The same way the class system in this country keeps the top 1.1%, of people up at the higher levels owning more things than the bottom 90%. So that has been by design. And even now, the latest Supreme Court ruling also infringed upon indigenous people's rights in Oklahoma. So this is by design, that constantly are giving people who are not rich, white, and I do emphasize rich, because a lot of white people still are voting against their own interests, thinking eventually we're going to be rich and we're going to be one of y'all. No, you're not. You're just going to be poor and white, and you're still holding on to whiteness. But the laws and the policies that are being put forth now are restricting more freedoms than they are giving.
Well,
And
this is
so,
my. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
and so when we celebrate with hot dogs and hamburgers and fireworks and potato salad without raisins, uh we
I
uh
don't have tonight.
we dismiss we dismiss a lot of things. And after you speak, Naeem, I even want to talk about what the flag now has become uh, uh, a symbol of.
Well, the American flag has almost become a symbol of the Confederate flag, because it
Exactly,
tends to be flown
exactly.
by the same people with those same attitudes. But this is my thought when Barbara, you asked what should we be doing about it. When people create a system, they create it for the purpose of excluding people.
Yes,
So if you want to be free, if you want freedom, you have to create your own system, and that takes some cooperation, that takes some trust, that takes some creativity. I mean,
It
the
takes
Native
leadership.
Americans, well, the Native Americans had a way of life that was not like the European way of life, but it's not like the Amish where they are making a decision to live without certain kinds of automation and to build their homes without bank financing, and instead they get together and help each other build, and
right.
very independent, but it's a decision that they've made, and it's an organized effort that they've made, so they can remain independent and free of a system, even though they do interact. They do have enterprises where they do business, and they might go to town and sell their items and things like that, but they maintain an autonomy on purpose. Whereas the Native Americans, they're restricted to lands that don't grow food, that don't have hunting grounds, that don't have where you can migrate to different places or set up your cloth made homes like teepees and so forth. I mean, they don't, all of that way of life is gone because of the encroachment of cities. So they don't have the way of life that was land-based and nature-based that they had, and they don't have access to the system that was built to exclude them. So what has to happen is creating something that you control that other people can't exclude you from. I know a lot of Native American communities, they've been using the casinos to get money to buy things, but there's
And that's
also a lot
putting
of,
them in slavery, really. That's putting them in
well,
bondage with all the
and there's also high
gambling and
alcoholism,
that.
you
Yeah.
know,
Well, I want to
bad
mention
food.
also, I want to jump in here and mention also a very good book when you say that they were given this land that did not grow. And what happened a couple of centuries ago, or maybe even less, there's a book that's called Killers of the Flower Moon. And it is about the murders of the Osage people who were moved onto this land because in Oklahoma because it was rocky, it was horrible, they couldn't grow anything. Well, guess what did happen? They discovered there was oil there, and all of a sudden these indigenous people became extremely rich, and people stepped in, the government stepped in, and they had to have white guardians. People were murdered and everything to take back what was rightfully theirs. But when they found out it was something that they wanted, they
Value.
had no problem with trying to figure out how they can control these people. Some of them came in and married into these families, and then suddenly those people died. And it's a horrible, horrible story, but it's one of my books that I had heard about. I read it, and then I recommended it on my reading list. It's called Killers of the Flower Moon. If I can pull it up, I can't even pull it up right
Yeah.
now. If I get a chance, I'll pull it up on my Kindle and tell you who wrote it.
Sure. Yeah.
But
Now,
it's but like Naima was saying, you kind of have to look for your own system. But we're also living right now in a system that willfully makes sure that you don't get a chance to do that, that you can't make these decisions for yourself, that you can't start your own uh society, as it were, so that they say, okay, we'll give you these casinos and we'll give you this. But there's a lot of drug addiction, there's a lot of alcoholism. That's not to say that all of them are, but that is part of the thing. There's also a lot of diabetes, because a lot of times you will find a lot of fast food deserts, things like that, also in these places where our indigenous brothers and sisters are being treated. And they're not give they would say, okay, you go here, we'll give you the government help. They are kept, and not all of them. I'm not saying that we're not doing the whole ghetto thing, but I'm saying that the government willfully tries to take away as much rights from people of color as humanly possible. And
and that's why I have to say that leadership is needed. Now, we've been watching the episodes, which I'd seen before when I went on my trek through all of the civil rights places. Eyes on the Prize is
mhm,
a 6-hour documentary that covers the civil rights movement from the 50s to the 70s. And in every place where Black people, African Americans, and any other group that was involved in voter registration, rights to desegregate schools, that all of that phenomena happened because you had people in leadership who were willing to do what it took to, for instance, be able to ride a bus and sit anywhere you want. The Montgomery bus boycott, where you had scores and scores of people that walked, or they had friends who had cars and they carpool. But that was like a 2-year struggle. People were willing to give that up in order to be treated right. And my personal feelings are, so many of us are pretty comfortable with the way things are, that we are not willing to give up something for the sake of our children. These people who gave up the ability to have to fight to be able to vote and get put in jail and lose a job and get beaten. These were people that were willing to go through this so that the next generation would have the rights that should have been theirs in the first place. I feel that that is needed for every group of people that are marginalized in our country, that you have someone who is willing to pull folks together with a common goal, a common uh, desire to make things right, to be the kind of country. I mean, the first person to die in the Revolutionary War was Crispus Attucks. That was a black man. A lot of people don't know that.
Well, that's funny because they should. I want to just jump in here. The name of the book, and it's going to be a film at some point. Killers of the Flower Moon: The Osage Murders and the Birth of the FBI. It's a national bestseller. I highly recommend this book. It's fascinating. The
Say
author
that
is
title
David
again.
Grann. Grann. The Killers of the Flower Moon. If you Google it, you can find it. And it, like I said, it's got a release date for a film, but don't just wait for the film. Read the
Read the
story.
book.
Read the book. Read the book. This is great summer reading for those of us who want to reach out and learn more about not just our communities. Barbara, you said something interesting about people need to be willing to make that sacrifice. But this is the thing, and this is what we found out and what we saw after George Floyd was murdered, was that there were a lot of people who were not just Black, who came out and who marched and who protested and who were willing to do things and willing to get in the fight. We have to get into the fight for each other. We need to get into the fight against Asian American or Asian violence. We need to get into the fight for our LGBTQIA plus communities that are being villainized. We need to get
Yeah.
into the fight for other people who are not just in our communities. And that's what keeps us separate, is that we say, okay, y'all didn't come out for us, so we're not coming out for you. Until we are all free, none of us,
No one is free.
no one
And
is
they
free.
did the same thing in Hawaii. I wish I could think of the name of the book that my friend, my Hawaiian roommate, shared with me when I was down visiting in Hawaii a few years back when John was going to Hawaii Pacific University. And the things that happened that totally destroyed their culture and their way of living in the
Yes.
state of Hawaii are, it's horrendous. And it's the kind of thing that you don't know, because no one wants to teach our ugly history on what has been done to various groups of people in our own country, where we are the best of many countries in comparison, but we're not there yet.
You know what? We're not the best of a lot of countries. We're closer and closer to a third world country than we want to say. We don't have universal health care. We don't have a lot of other things. We have millions of children who go to bed hungry every single night. We have children who, once summer starts, they stop eating. We have too many food insecure people. We have too many people who are homeless, including families. We have so much. That whole American exceptionalism is a load of, excuse me, crap. And we need to face up to it and admit it, because if we don't acknowledge it and we keep saying, oh, we're so great and we want to wave the flag and all this other kind of stuff, where we're like passing by the homeless guy for the 50th time that day, then you know what, we're not being truthful to ourselves.
Well, the
We
thing
are.
about it, if you have a standard of what it means to be free or what it means to be civilized, it's not how much so-called wealth you have. It's when every member of your society feels safe and secure and cared for.
Yes.
So as far as that goes, we're way down low on the totem pole. And there are some nations that might be smaller, might not have as much extravagance in terms of things, but people can sleep with their doors unlocked, or they can walk down the street in the middle of the night without fear, or they can
or they don't
leave their
have to have
bicycle outside and it still be there in the morning. I mean, it's
they
just,
don't have to have shooting active shooter drills from the time they are preschoolers.
yes. So things like that. There is no freedom when you live in fear. And
Right.
we live in fear right now. So this is probably one of the least free countries in the world. The way we're living right now is like countries live, like people live in countries where they're in a state of war, where you never know where the next act of violence is going to come, or you never know when the next unexpected death is going to come from a bullet. I mean, these kinds of things, that's not freedom.
And
So
can I yeah, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to share a quick story about my daughter. And like I said, none of our family watches this, so we're good. But she went out last night and she went to an all women's event where she could dance and she looked beautiful as always. But she said, I had the best time. The problem with going to the clubs is that men just really make it awful. So where she felt safe where she was going, and she liked it. She loved it because she could go there with her friends, not have guys creepy, hitting on her, which is, because they're creepy when they do it, and staring at her and the whole thing. Men have started to make women feel, and they always have, but men start to make women feel unsafe in a lot of places. And that's part of that freedom, like you said, Naima, about being able to walk down the street at night. You've had it happen in Korea. Sarah has had it happen in Korea. I've had it happen in Japan, where you can get out in the middle of the night, two women walking. You're not constantly got your head on the swivel. So there's a lot of freedoms that we as women take for granted that we don't have, and we don't protest it. When they
yeah,
talk about curfews, why isn't it the men that need to have the curfews? Why are you having a curfew of the women? The women aren't the ones out here doing the crimes, you know.
absolutely.
So
Well, a friend of mine who travels a lot, he's a photographer, one of my photographer friends, and he went to, I'm trying to remember which country in Africa it was. I'm thinking it might have been Senegal, but he was talking about his experience, and he was walking along the street. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and this woman was walking toward him. Now, black man in America, you used to the women, clutching the purse, crossing the
right,
street, looking at
right.
you like you about to attack them. And she just walked past, just kind of glanced and walked past, and just totally oblivious. And he realized that she felt safe because they didn't have that problem there. They don't.
Yes.
That's not an issue for women there. Men don't do that there. So therefore, she did not respond to him as if he was someone that was dangerous or someone she should fear. And he talked about how relieved he felt in not having that response from a woman, because that's not what she was expecting from him. And so it kind of goes both ways. When you have a culture where people feel unsafe, then there is no trust. There is no sense of freedom, because can somebody walk down a kind of semi-dark street here at 2 o'clock in the morning? Can a woman do that and feel safe when a man walks toward her? No.
Only
You
if I
can't even
got
do
my
that in
dog.
the light.
I can do it. I can do it if I got my dog with me. And
Yeah.
that was the best thing about that's one of the best things about having a dog. Is like, if I want to
Dog.
go out at night because it's a beautiful night and I want to take a walk, I can take my dog, and she's big enough and scary looking enough that nobody's going to bother me. Will she bite? Well, she's got teeth.
Yeah. Well, then there's the story of the woman. I don't know if you all saw that on Facebook. The woman walking her dog in the park and got
Yes,
harassed by a police officer. So it's
yes,
like,
yes, I
But
did
what?
see that.
What happened?
Yes, that was
this police officer harassed her, and she's just minding her own business, walking her dog, and he wanted to act like he wanted to arrest her. And she's like,
he
because he said,
eventually
well, the
let her
park is
go, but it
closed,
was
and I told you to leave. And she's like,
yes,
look, but you're not
yes,
bothering anybody else. So even those kinds of things where you're subject to some unexpected racially motivated act
Harassment.
of
yes.
harassment, that makes you feel not free. And I think that's probably the thing that our children experience most when you talk about freedoms and what does it mean to be free. I mean, they grew up in the post Jim Crow, post civil rights movement era. the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, 2000s. They grew up in that era where supposedly things have changed, but then, like you point out with the George Floyds and everything else, there's an escalation of hostilities coming out of we don't know where. But as a result, most
Fear.
young Black men that I talk to, they do not feel free. They do feel apprehensive. They do feel angry that they can't feel free in this country where we talk about freedom, because they're always feeling like there's going to be some unexpected attack just because they exist. And that has to change. But how does that change when everybody's afraid? Just like we don't feel safe around men because of the attacks on women. So when people are constantly experiencing attack, they don't trust each other. And when you don't trust each other, then you can't work together. So something has to happen to change the expectation of each other, the perception of each other, and the behavior of each other. Otherwise, there's no freedom when people don't feel safe.
Yes, exactly. And there's so many of us for so many reasons who never feel safe. Women don't feel safe. I've been in a class, and I think I've talked about this before. Well, ask the women how many times what they have to do to get ready to go, or if they go out to a bar, do you ever leave your friend? That's when I first found out what an angel shot is. I think I'd mentioned that before in the previous show, that if a woman goes to a bartender and asks for an angel shot, that means that someone is bothering her and that they need to intervene, and all these things that I'm learning from my students. But the men, a lot of them, they didn't even think about it. Yeah, you can go out and get drunk and stumble home and whatever. But the women, they're like, no, you never leave. It's like the Marines. You never leave a woman behind. And I actually saw on Instagram where a woman was being pulled, obviously quite drunk, being pulled into a car by two men, a black woman, because we save the world, came up, she, with her shopping cart, and she stopped them and she alerted, and this is all on film, she alerted these other young women who came out and grabbed the woman, who was still pretty much comatose, and the men like drove off, and in the meantime they were getting their license plate. But this was a woman who was obviously inebriated and had no idea what would have happened to her if these other women hadn't stepped in, these strangers had not stepped in and heeded that, like, wait a minute, you don't pull a woman who's like comatose and you're pushing her in the back seat of a car. And those are the kinds of things that my daughter has to worry about. So she knows that she can always call us if she can't get a lift home, if somebody's going to come and get her, or an Uber or a taxi or whatever. But these are the things that women always have to think of when they go out, and men don't have to think about that, which means we're not free. None of us are free.
Well,
None of
don't
it.
you remember even this isn't really a new thing. I remember when I was first going off to college and mama was saying, don't ever get a drink and then leave it, keep your
Right.
First of all, she said, don't eat anything, don't drink anything. You can go, you can dance, don't do anything else. So that was like the warning. And this is in the 70s. So we've always had that
We've
level
always
of
known.
a lack of safety in places that are generally supposed to be fun and safe, but it isn't, because there are unscrupulous characters everywhere you go, and that's life. I'm sorry to say that's everywhere. Some places it's more than others. We have lost that Andy of Mayberry type of feel to several areas in the world. Our neighborhood, of course, was quite safe as a kid growing up. But as people become more transient, as you said one time, Cheryl,
Yeah.
it
You don't
changes
know your
the
neighbors. You don't know
atmosphere.
your neighbors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it changes the environment. People that they're not settled, that whole feeling of family and we're all in this together. I think that's what made certain movements toward civil rights work together, because everyone felt that they were in it
Yes.
together.
Yes. now there's so many of us at cross purposes. It's not about building a community together. It's about one-upping each other.
And
You
that's
know,
sad.
yes.
Right. Well, we got to take a break. When we come back,
Are you able to get my friend Maria from
we're gonna try again and see if she can join us and give us a perspective, and maybe tell us some of her experiences coming to America, and what does freedom mean to an immigrant who came here by choice and maybe had a different expectation of the American dream. So we'll be right back after this quick break. Stay with us.
The Female Solution Global Radio TV Show invites you to an invigorating conversation with our team of hosts Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time. Start your week with Monday Morning Mindfulness with Zelda Speaks. Tuesdays, Self-Cell Care with Jody Susan. Wednesdays, Repairing Broken Families with Naima Latif and co-host Kareem Hamid. Thursdays, Soulful Solutions with Dr. Debbie Green. And Fridays, Health and Wellbeing with Beata. Saturdays, tune in 12 noon to 2 p.m. Central Time. First Saturday, Success Strategies with Jana. Second Saturday, Wendy Williams Esquire on relationships. Third Saturday, Move Around with Deborah. And fourth Saturday, Wisdom with Mama D. Join us Sundays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Central Time for Soul Purpose Healing with Beata. Call in and comment 515-605-9325. Press 1 to speak to the host and be a part of the solution.
Well, we are back. And I don't think your friend Maria is going to be joining us. She's not answering. So one of the things I wanted to take a look at is what we should be teaching our children about this whole 4th of July thing. I mean, I loved going to Boston every year and seeing the fireworks, and me and Zakia had such a great time during that. And then she
The cradle of democracy.
Right. So when we get all the history of everything, because so much happened on the East Coast with the formation of the American Revolution. But then there's also the historic realities of what happened afterwards, and even now what we're experiencing, the decisions that were made favoring the Southern landowners who had slaves and all of that.
And they were compensated, not the slaves. They were compensated for the loss of their property, and we still have not been compensated for our unpaid labor. And I say our as in our ancestors. So yes, my word is always going to be reparations, because
so the more time passes, the more
y'all
the thing about it, you have so many families that are mixed, so many families that are new immigrants from Africa, so many families that some maybe have passed for white somewhere along the line, but now it's like, okay, well, if I can get some money, maybe I'll go back and be black again. I mean, it's all of that.
It's funny because when I did the 23andMe, I know that you did it too, Barbara. And after a few generations, we started seeing some white people popping up.
Yeah.
If you go back far enough,
somewhere was passing. It's like fourth cousins and things like that. Fourth and fifth cousins.
Yes.
Okay, somebody was passing somewhere. And then all of a sudden you see all these people says, you know what? They don't look like all these other brown folks. So yeah. So it'll be the same way it happened when they started giving the Native Americans or the indigenous people casinos. All of a sudden,
everybody got some Native American in them.
132nd, and so they wanted some of that casino money. Well, you know what? I'm not claiming it because the little bit of Native American that we got in there ain't enough for me to try to scam some people out of some money, because people see a black woman when they see me coming.
Well, I think though, when it comes to repairing the damage, I don't know if it's something that can be done to families. I know somebody asked this question. There was a candidates forum before the last election, and the question was asked about reparations. What is your position on reparations? And matter of fact, Jonathan Jackson, who happened to have won the election for 1st Congressional District, congressman, I remember his answer was that we need to correct the institutions that keep racism happening. You know, you need to correct the educational institutions and make the opportunities be available. You know, correct the economic institutions
Disparities. Yeah.
that you know, block us from banking privileges and you know, business loan opportunities. You know,
Buying houses.
right, buying houses. So we need to fix the inequities in the justice system and the disparities in sentencing and all of these things. So if you fix the systems, you repair the systems that are still keeping racism as an undercurrent of our society, then people can naturally excel because they don't have those barriers anymore. And I tend to think that's probably the fairest way, just to keep, like you said, you know, all of a sudden everybody's black that, you know, been passing for 3-4 generations. Oh, see how my head now come when there's no water on it. You know,
So, you know,
You have
part of
to
it is
out.
we know that we have these problems. My opinion is you pick a specific cause where you are going to see some kind of change and you stick with it for as long as you can. You can't cure everything, but there are some things you can do, and you may have to be willing to give up something. I know when I was back training and running for Chicago marathons, all of the money that I raised went toward building water wells in African countries, supporting African orphans. You know, even scripture tells us that we need to have a heart and a willingness to look out for the widow, for the orphan, for those who have less than we do. These are mandates that we can actually practice in our everyday lives. There are enough causes for someone to get a hold of and do something where you see a small change. I always think to myself how Daddy would have been so excited to have been alive to see Obama become president.
I
That,
know.
and
I
after the way he
know.
was treated as a young black man who had to fight to be able to get the vote with that, how many bubbles in a bar of soap? If you can tell me
Yep.
that, you can, crazy stuff like that. But it was because you had people that were willing to join together for a particular cause where they were going to see a change, maybe not in their lifetime, but definitely for their children and grandchildren's lifetime. Sometimes I just think we're too lazy. We don't want to give up what we got.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that about Daddy, because the night that President Obama won the first time, I said, Daddy, we got one in the White House. And I just, because I do talk to him from time to time. And it was just, he was the first person that I thought of that I says, you would have loved to see this. You would have loved to see this. But President Obama, and he will always be my president, and Michelle will always be my forever first lady. But they were just the first. We do not want them to be the last. And when Sarah was little and people said, oh, she might be the first woman president, I said, yes, thank you very much, but I would rather her be the fourth, because who wants to
other people break the ground?
No, because who wants to wait 40 years?
Oh,
she was in second grade, so I don't want to wait 40 years.
Right.
So this is the thing. I'm good with AOC being the first one, but
I'm kind of thinking Kamala would probably be
Kamala, Elizabeth Warren, all of them, one after the other. I don't care. But the thing is that it's funny that we talk about not wanting to give up things, and that's part of it. But the one thing I want to say about reparations, because Evanston just did this whole thing about giving money to people so that they could buy well, they could either
Buy
use
home.
their home, they could buy their homes, they could put money down. It's 25,000. It's a pittance considering how many years. But the problem with that is that I said as long as they would give them the money and say this is what you use for whatever you need it for, that's fine. But don't give me what you owe me and then tell me that you have conditions on it. You know what I mean? Don't say, because people, a lot of times people did not want to give when we have a child tax credit, and then when they didn't renew it, people were saying, well, yeah, people are going to go and buy drugs with it, or they're going to buy whatever with it. You know what? That lifted 40% more children out of poverty. If some people bought drugs with it, okay, that meant that was a day. Those people weren't knocking somebody in the head to get that money. You have to stop assuming that people are going to do the worst when and that's what we do. We tend to assume that, well, these people don't deserve it, and so we don't help anyone rather than help everyone and take a chance that some people might get what they don't deserve. We would rather not help anyone because one or two people might get what they don't deserve.
Well, I think everybody deserves it, but not everybody knows how to benefit from it. It's just like
Yes, but
when people talk
everybody, but
stimulus money,
everybody gets a chance. Everybody should get the chance to make
right?
their decisions instead of somebody saying, "Well, I don't want to give, I don't want to give the child tax credit to anybody because some of these people they might buy drugs with it instead of shoes, or they might buy alcohol. You know what? So you're going to punish everyone for what you think might happen.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that everybody should have an opportunity, and then once you get it, don't say nothing else. That's it. Okay, we're giving you this. This issue is closed. If you blow the money, too bad. You had opportunity. You could buy property with it. You could put it on investments. You could buy stocks. You could send your child to school. You could get another degree. You can start a business. You can do whatever you want with whatever this sum of money is that you
Whatever
get.
you decide
But,
your need
but,
is.
but once it's done, don't come back and ask for nothing else because you made the choice on how you're going to use it. So I think if there's a dollar figure that is doable, I mean, everybody calculating all these figures. Well, they owe each person $1 million. Well, that's probably not going to happen. We can't even
You
take
know what?
it.
They've sent eight how many millions have they sent to the Ukraine? They could get all the black people $1 million and still have money to send to the Ukraine. So that's the thing. We prioritize what countries matter, what people matter. And a lot of times, like Barbara, you were saying about you all sending money to help orphans in Africa. There are orphans here, and Flint, Michigan has had a water crisis that
And they
affected
still
black
have it.
neighborhoods and they still do. That's right here in this country. Not far from where you, Naima, live.
Oh
So
yeah, we went down to Flint and reported on that whole thing, and we saw
yes,
how
yes. So
they
we can,
hadn't put in the new pipes yet. And yeah, it's horrible. And we saw
yeah,
what the water looked like. They were
yes, it was
making sense.
awful, and it's still awful. And there are other places where the water is awful, and that's the thing is
Yeah.
that we not saying that we can't help others, but we also need to help us and
Well,
stop.
Charity starts in your own home.
Yes,
this is what I think when it comes to freedom. If you want to be free, and I understand what you're saying, Robert, you got to be willing to give up something. One of the things you got to be able to give up. I always think about that Dr. Seuss show about the star-bellied
the
sneetches.
star-bellied
Yes.
sneetches.
And I'm always thinking, I remember when I was watching that and I was thinking, why are they spending all that energy trying to be like these other people? Why don't they just get their own things? And that's really what you have to do is give up wanting to be with someone else and wanting them to like and approve of you and wanting them to give you some of what they have. Because if you have the power to create your own, you really don't need.
HBCUs. HBCUs came about because we said, fine,
Yeah.
you don't want us in your school, we'll make our
We'll
own.
make our own. And that really has to be the spirit of people who want to be free. You're never free as long as you're dependent on somebody else. What is that saying about
Asking the oppressor to or
Pull
they're
himself by his own bootstraps,
Trying
and he
to
doesn't
ride
have
to freedom
to
in Pharaoh's chariot or something. Yeah, was that saying Reverend Jackson always saying, you can't ride to freedom in Pharaoh's chariot.
right,
You know.
right.
So the
Right.
thing is, you have to think in terms of taking responsibility for your decisions. That's why just giving people money will not free them, because if you the mind that created your condition will still be the same mind that will put you back in that condition. And I can't remember if it was
But
Oprah or
denying them will not help them either.
that's true. I mean, you have to give people an opportunity, but if you're expecting the people who are excluding you on purpose to do it, that's not realistic either, because they're purposely excluding you. They're purposely creating an underclass. They're purposely creating a criminal justice system that maintains the slave system that they never wanted to end in the first place. So
You know,
knowing that, don't
you know
expect
what
those
worked?
people to change your condition because they don't intend to.
You know what worked, and I liked this idea. It was Andrew Yang's about the universal basic income.
Oh
And
yeah.
it sounded like, oh, that's just welfare. And a lot of people says, yeah, that it's the same thing with canceling student debt. They're so afraid that some people who might not need it, like, oh, well, rich people will get it for free. Let me tell you something. Rich people did not take out loans.
Right. They
Yeah.
just paid
So
for it.
don't worry about some
Or they, or they
yeah,
might
they
have
did
got a
not take
scholarship.
out loans. You
Yeah.
know, so and we have a whole two generations of people who are still, paying off their student debt. And let's not talk about how many black people 20 years after fact still owe 90%. So
And might
that's
not never got a job in their field that they
yes,
borrowed the money
exactly,
for.
or did not finish. But the
Mhm.
thing is that with Andrew Yang, what they found out when they've done an experiment, I guess it was in one of the cities, one of the small towns or cities in California, you get a universal basic income, and these people have said, yeah, but if you give people that, they're not going to work. Yeah, they will. But what that will do is lift them out of poverty so that yes, they can pay the rent. But yes, they don't have to worry about, oh, am I heating my house this week or am I eating this week? They're not they're not going out and blowing all the money. They're using it. The same thing with the child tax credit. People were using it for their basic needs, and there's nothing wrong
Right.
with a universal uh, income, basic income. If it was $1,000 a month, that's still just 12,000 a year. And I'm gonna tell you something that can make so many people so much better off, but it's not going to keep nobody's going to like say, oh, I'm making 12,000 a year, I don't need to work anymore. No, but it might
Right.
help you get an apartment so that you can get a better job so that you're not homeless. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. And we as a country are rich enough to do that. If we had rich people who have billions of dollars pay their share in taxes instead of paying nothing, that will
Yeah,
pay for college, because there are other countries where college is free.
absolutely. And
So
and
there's
that
so
is
many
that is
things
the
that we
issue
can
that we
do,
have here.
and that's freedom too. That's
Yes,
freedom too. It's the freedom to learn, to educate yourself, to get to the point
absolutely.
where you can become a productive member of society. So there's all kinds of ways we can be free without, waving a flag and yelling, God bless America, love it or leave it.
Well, freedom is when everybody wants everybody else's well-being.
Yes. Yes. Why do we
When
have to have
when,
someone
when
to
that
look down on?
when that is the objective for what you do, then everybody's free because everybody is safe, because no one is trying to take advantage of someone or trying to withhold something that someone needs for their survival. And there are countries where healthcare is free.
Yes.
And like you said, there's countries where education is free, and places where people don't have to struggle for basic things. Those people excel. The country prospers, and people feel safe because their basic needs are taken care of. So that's a mindset. That's a mindset that comes from within, when you realize that you are your brother's keeper, and everybody should live comfortably and not live in fear and not have to worry about basic survival, living on the street in the cold or in the excessive heat and dying because you don't have enough money to pay for a room, and people will walk past you and scorn you because they refuse to share, but they look down on you because you're suffering because of their selfishness. So and speaking what you talk about, being willing to give up something, Barbara, what everybody has to give up is the idea of, I want to be better than someone else. I don't want them to have
Exactly.
what I have.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Instead of always worrying that there's not somebody down there that we can look down on, we need to be looking how we can lift each other up. And granted, there are plenty of countries where, that, yeah, every country has crime. We're not going to say that there's a utopia out there where everything's free and everybody's happy, because there are just people who have mental
Greed.
health issues or other issues, or hatred or evil in their hearts, or whatever you want to call it. So you're always going to have people who are not going to be part of the solution. They just want to be part of the problem. But we could be doing better in this country to be part of the solution, instead of everyone jostling to get on top of the heat, even if I got to step on your neck to get there.
Well, the big lie that we tell and we allow to be taught is that there's not enough in the earth for everybody.
There's
And
enough for everybody.
there's enough
This
for
country
everybody.
throws away
Everyone
40% of
starves.
food. There are
Right.
children going to bed hungry, and people throw away 40% of food every single day.
And there are farmers that are being paid to not
Do
farm.
Do
not
not
farm.
farm.
So
That is true.
yeah. So I mean, there are ways we can fix this. There are ways that we can learn better how to take care of the earth, how to nurture it, how to grow what would feed people without making it difficult. I mean, the solution is in our hands. And the solution can be enacted even if the lawmakers never change a single law. Everybody is responsible for whether or not they choose to share with their neighbor, whether or not they choose to learn how to grow their own food, whether or not they choose to take care of their bodies so that they're not preyed upon by a healthcare system that is profit driven.
That
All
is
of these
profit
systems
driven.
are
Instead, it's a
profit-driven.
sick care system
The
and
sick
not a
care
health
system.
care system.
So
Well, I know I'll be doing my part for July 4th. I'm having a cookout and a bunch of friends over.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think that we should celebrate without feeling like, because we used to go through this, Barbara. I know we used to go through this every Thanksgiving when our families got together. And my husband Sultan, he would always want to remind us of the history of Thanksgiving and how the native people were killed. I mean, yeah, okay, yeah, we know that, but can we just eat the turkey? So
And
I
we've
mean,
done, and we've done that in our class too, where
yeah,
we've talked about that, but and we recognize that, but also we're not saying, yeah, you got to turn the table over at Thanksgiving, even though one
Yeah.
of my favorite YouTube
Flip some
things is to
tables.
do that. But the thing is that you can acknowledge that,
yeah,
but you also have to acknowledge, okay, that's not the real story,
yeah.
but
This is
we
what
are
we're
celebrating,
aiming for.
and we need to celebrate the fact that indigenous people, to their detriment, shared with people. Bet you they could take that back, but their spirit was pure,
So
even if the people who took it were not.
So then, that being the reality, as we celebrate the 4th of July, we can celebrate the inspiration for the idea that actually came from the native people. It was
Yes,
the Iroquois nation that Benjamin Franklin saw at the 5 nations with their representative government. That inspired the idea to create a kind of a government where there was representation, where there was democracy, where everybody had a
that's
voice.
right. Because when they
That's
were
not
going,
where Europeans came from. They came from a monarchy. So
yeah, and they wanted a king. They wanted
yeah,
George Washington to be a king.
yeah. I mean, you only know
So
what you know. But when they
yes,
saw something different from the native people that had a representative government and had people having a voice in their say of how they're governed, then they developed that idea. So we can celebrate the idea of America and what it's striving to become, and maybe even what it has been for some people who have come from some dictatorships or war-torn countries, and this has been a refuge. So I think the idea is good.
They know what they don't want.
They know what they don't want. That's what life is. It teaches you what you want and what you don't want. So we know we don't want a system of slavery where people are treated cruelly and brutally and
not paid.
And not paid, and then you have to be afraid of them later on because you're always afraid they're gonna get revenge. So we don't want that.
You know you deserve it.
I mean, to be fair, everybody who did all that stuff is gone, and everybody it happened to is gone. We're just the descendants of
but there are people who are still benefiting from it.
Yeah.
The people who have generational wealth are still benefiting from it, and they have to acknowledge that too. We're not saying that we want revenge. We're saying that we want equality, and we want you to understand that equality is not like pie. If you give something to me, that doesn't mean that you get less for yourself.
Well, the objective has to be to create the America that it is on paper and looks good, but never really was actualized. So it's an idea that we're still striving to make a reality, and the way to make it a reality is to point out the spots where it's still not quite existing yet, but to be grateful for the gains that we have made. Because I mean, this is post Jim Crow. Jim Crow is gone. Civil rights, we did have Barack Obama in the White House, and we got a black vice president. So we do have some strides, and we can be grateful, but we know we have a long way to go. And if we can define the objective being that we can be free when everybody wants everybody else's well-being, and any law or any practice that doesn't add to that is an inhibition of our freedom, and we need to remove it, and we need to work collectively to do that. If we can agree to that, then we can at least give people some hope, and go ahead and enjoy your fireworks. I hate fireworks because they're a simulation of gunshots, but hey, the pretty colors in the air, I hate that because it's pollution. But don't let me down for your
all of that. We went last night.
All of that. Have fun. Eat your hot dogs. I'm not a meat eater. Okay. Well, eat your plant-based hot dogs.
Hamburgers, eat veggie burgers, eat whatever you want.
Veggie burgers, have fun. But
don't keep the potato salad out in the sun.
Yeah, with mayonnaise. Yeah, mayonnaise. Absolutely. But I think our children should be given a vision of hope with this. I think there's a lot of hype with waving the flag in America and all that. But I think we
need hope.
We shouldn't burden our this current generation with our anger over the past. We should let them feel that they are living in a land of the free, or at least if it's not free, they have the power to make it free. If we give them that feeling, then they won't feel like helpless victims. They can feel that hope, and they can feel some joy.
And they can strive for the things that the people in our past has worked toward, for them to have those freedoms that they have. We have the freedom to protest things that we are in disagreement about. In other countries, they will chop your head off if you speak out against the government. So we have a
do that here too,
where there are definite disparities, but you can definitely stand up and speak out against what you are standing up for. You can take a knee. You can protest along the streets. You can write your congressman, call your senator. You can do things that will put changes in motion. I know sometimes people get discouraged because they don't see things right away. And sometimes you don't. Sometimes it is the next generation that's going to benefit from your work.
Absolutely. And that's okay, because that's why we keep having babies. And that's why some people exit and some people enter. So new people can create new things and create a new reality. So it's a good thing. So, hey, happy 4th of July, everybody. Enjoy your holiday.
And your day off if you don't have to work.
Yes.
I hope you get time and a half or double time if you do, because you deserve it. And
please be safe with the fireworks.
Please be safe with the fireworks. Be careful of your pets if they are freaked out by it.
Children.
And your
Let
young
me speak out
children.
against real quickly because we do want to be mindful of children. Those sparklers are extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kids get second and third degree burns from those. I mean, they're cute and everything, but anyone under the age of 10 probably should not be waving a sprinkler.
Anyone
Mm.
under the age of 40 should not be waving a sprinkler. You still get at 10 years old, you can still get third degree
Yeah.
burns from them.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
know.
I was never a fan of sprinklers for my kids. We could watch them. We would go downtown and watch them from Navy Pier, sometimes from the roof of our own home. But yeah.
Yeah. Be
I mean,
safe. Watch your
Be safe, watch
highway
your pets,
distance.
watch your children, and
Yeah.
vote.
That's right. And remember to vote in your upcoming elections. That's what keeps us free. Well, we got to go. It's been fun. Thanks so much for tuning in, listening in, and make sure you follow us on Facebook and like us on YouTube, or like us on Facebook and follow us on YouTube. And you'll get notices whenever we're live at 5 Central Time, 6 Eastern Time, every Sunday on Three Black Moms. So until next time, I'm Naima.
I'm Cheryl.
I'm Barbara. We are three Black moms. Happy 4th of July. Independence Day. Bye. Hi, I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three Black moms.